Sarah Martinez had dreamed of serving her country since childhood. Growing up in a small Texas town, she watched her grandfather's military medals gleam on the mantelpiece and listened to his stories about honor, duty, and sacrifice. At 18, she enlisted in the Army with stars in her eyes and determination in her heart. The bus ride to Fort Benning felt like the longest journey of her life. Sarah pressed her face against the window, watching the landscape blur past as nervous excitement churned in her stomach. She had spent months preparing physically and mentally for this moment. Every morning run, every push-up, every practice drill had led to this day. When the bus doors hissed open, the Georgia heat hit her like a wall. Drill sergeants immediately began shouting orders, their voices cutting through the humid air like knives. Sarah grabbed her duffel bag and fell in line with dozens of other recruits, all looking equally overwhelmed and determined. Basic training was everything she expected and nothing she was prepared for. The days blended together in a haze of early morning reveille, grueling physical training, weapons instruction, and classroom sessions. Sarah discovered muscles she never knew existed as her body adapted to the demanding routine. Her bunkmates came from all walks of life. There was Jessica from California, whose father was a Marine, and Maria from New York, who joined to pay for college. They bonded over shared exhaustion and the universal experience of having drill sergeants question their life choices at maximum volume. Sarah excelled in many areas. Her marksmanship scores were consistently high, and she had a natural aptitude for tactical thinking. During field exercises, she often found creative solutions to complex problems. Her instructors began to take notice, marking her as potential leadership material. The physical challenges pushed her to her limits. The obstacle courses seemed designed by someone who enjoyed watching people suffer, but Sarah attacked each challenge with fierce determination. When other recruits struggled with the rope climb or faltered during long marches, she was there to offer encouragement and support. Weeks turned into months as Sarah transformed from a civilian into a soldier. Her soft edges hardened into lean muscle. Her hesitant voice grew confident and commanding. The scared teenager who had stepped off the bus was replaced by someone stronger, more capable, and absolutely certain of her place in the military. As graduation approached, Sarah felt proud of how far she had come. She had survived every challenge thrown at her way. The drill sergeants who had seemed like heartless taskmasters revealed themselves to be dedicated professionals who genuinely cared about turning recruits into effective soldiers. Her family arrived for the graduation ceremony, and Sarah barely recognized the person looking back at her from the mirror. She stood taller, moved with purpose, and carried herself with the bearing of someone who had been tested and not found wanting. The ceremony itself was everything she had imagined. Standing in formation with her fellow graduates, Sarah felt a sense of belonging and accomplishment that she had never experienced before. When her name was called and she received her certificate, her grandfather's proud smile from the audience made every difficult moment worthwhile. Advanced training would be next, and Sarah was eager for the challenges ahead. She had chosen military police as her specialty, drawn to the combination of law enforcement and military discipline. The training would be intensive, but she felt ready for anything the Army could throw at her. The night before shipping out to her advanced training base, Sarah called her grandfather. His voice was thick with pride as he told her how much she reminded him of himself at that age. They talked about duty, honor, and the sacrifices that came with wearing the uniform. He reminded her that the military would test not just her physical strength, but her character and moral courage as well. Sarah packed her belongings with careful precision, every item folded and placed according to regulations she now knew by heart. Her civilian clothes looked strange and foreign, relics from a life that felt like it belonged to someone else entirely. The bus ride to Fort Leonard Wood was different from her first journey. This time, Sarah sat with the confident posture of someone who belonged. She was no longer the uncertain teenager seeking her place in the world. She was a soldier, trained and ready to serve her country with honor and distinction. Fort Leonard Wood buzzed with activity as Sarah arrived for her military police advanced individual training. The base was massive, with countless buildings, training facilities, and thousands of soldiers moving with purpose throughout the grounds. She felt a surge of excitement as she realized she was about to specialize in the field that would define her military career. The military police training was significantly more complex than basic training. Sarah found herself learning about law enforcement procedures, criminal investigations, traffic control, and base security operations. The coursework challenged her intellect, while the practical exercises pushed her physical skills to new levels. Her instructors were a mix of seasoned, non-commissioned officers and civilian contractors with extensive law enforcement backgrounds. Staff Sergeant Davis, a 20-year veteran with multiple deployments, quickly became someone Sarah looked up to. He had a way of explaining complex procedures that made everything click into place. The weapons training expanded beyond basic marksmanship to include specialized equipment and tactical scenarios. Sarah learned to operate in teams, coordinate responses to various emergencies, and make split-second decisions under pressure. She discovered that she had excellent instincts for reading situations and people. During scenario-based training exercises, Sarah consistently performed above average. Whether dealing with simulated domestic disputes, conducting traffic stops, or responding to security breaches, she maintained her composure and followed proper procedures while adapting to unexpected developments. Her fellow trainees recognized her natural leadership abilities. When they were given group projects or team-based exercises, others naturally looked to Sarah for guidance. She had a way of bringing out the best in people while ensuring that everyone contributed their strengths to the team's success. The academic portion of the training required studying military law, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and various civilian legal procedures. Sarah spent countless hours in the library, poring over case studies and memorizing regulations. She found the legal aspects fascinating, appreciating how they balanced military necessity with individual rights. One particularly challenging exercise involved a mock investigation of stolen property from the base exchange. Sarah was assigned as the lead investigator and had to interview witnesses, collect evidence, and present her findings to instructors playing the roles of commanding officers. Her thorough preparation and attention to detail impressed everyone involved. Physical training remained a crucial component of the program. Military police needed to be in excellent physical condition to handle the demands of their duties. Sarah continued to excel in this area, often finishing first in unit runs and maxing out her physical fitness tests. The defensive tactics training introduced her to hand-to-hand combat techniques, restraint procedures, and crowd control methods. Sarah discovered that her smaller stature could be an advantage when properly applied leverage and technique overcame raw strength. She became particularly skilled at defensive maneuvers and de-escalation techniques. As the weeks progressed, Sarah began to envision her future in the military police. She imagined herself stationed at various bases around the world, maintaining order and ensuring the safety of fellow soldiers. The possibility of deploying to support combat operations both excited and sobered her. Her instructors began discussing potential assignments and career paths. Some students would be assigned to traditional military police companies, while others might join specialized units focused on investigations, K-9 operations, or base security. Sarah expressed interest in investigative work, feeling drawn to the intellectual challenges it would present. The training culminated in a comprehensive field exercise that lasted several days. Students were divided into shifts and assigned to patrol a mock base, responding to various scenarios that tested everything they had learned. Sarah found herself dealing with simulated break-ins, traffic accidents, domestic disturbances, and security threats. During one particularly intense scenario, Sarah was partnered with another trainee to respond to a reported assault. The situation involved multiple witnesses with conflicting stories, potential evidence that needed to be secured, and a suspect who was uncooperative and potentially dangerous. Sarah took charge of the scene, methodically gathering information while ensuring everyone's safety. Her performance during the exercise earned praise from multiple instructors. They noted her ability to remain calm under pressure, her attention to procedural details, and her natural leadership presence. Several mentioned that she had the potential to advance quickly through the non-commissioned officer ranks. Graduation day arrived with the same ceremony and pride that had marked the end of basic training. Sarah's family made the trip once again, and she could see how much she had grown in their eyes. She was no longer just a soldier. She was now a trained military police officer, ready to take on real responsibilities. The assignment process began immediately after graduation. Sarah waited anxiously to learn where she would be stationed for her first duty assignment. The possibilities ranged from bases in the United States to overseas locations in Europe, Asia, or the Middle East. Each option presented different opportunities and challenges. When her orders came through, Sarah learned she would be assigned to Fort Carson in Colorado Springs, Colorado. The base was home to several combat units and had a reputation for high operational tempo and professional excellence. She would be joining the 759th Military Police Battalion, a unit with a proud history and demanding standards. Sarah spent her final days at Fort Leonard Wood saying goodbye to classmates who had become close friends. They exchanged contact information and promised to stay in touch as their careers took them to different corners of the world. Many expressed confidence that they would cross paths again during future assignments. The drive to Colorado gave Sarah time to reflect on her journey so far. From the nervous teenager who had first enlisted to the confident military police officer she had become, the transformation was remarkable. She felt ready to prove herself in a real-world environment where her decisions would have genuine consequences for the soldiers and civilians she would serve. Fort Carson sprawled across the Colorado landscape like a small city, with the Rocky Mountains providing a dramatic backdrop to Sarah's new home. As she drove through the main gate for the first time, she felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness about what lay ahead. This was where her real career would begin. The in-processing took several days as Sarah completed administrative requirements, received her room assignment in the barracks, and began learning about her new unit. The 759th Military Police Battalion had a reputation for excellence, and the standards were immediately apparent in everything from the immaculate condition of the facilities to the professional bearing of the soldiers she encountered. Sarah was assigned to the 984th Military Police Company, where she would work patrol duties covering different areas of the large base. Her first sergeant, a stern but fair veteran named First Sergeant Williams, explained the company's mission and expectations during their initial meeting. The company operated on a shift system that provided 24-hour coverage of Fort Carson. Sarah was assigned to the evening shift, which typically saw more activity as soldiers finished their duty days and engaged in recreational activities. The shift ran from 4 in the afternoon until midnight, covering the time when most incidents occurred. Her field training officer was Sergeant Thompson, a 5-year veteran who had deployed twice and had extensive experience in military police operations. Thompson was known for being thorough and demanding, but also for developing excellent soldiers who could handle any situation they encountered. The first few weeks involved extensive on-the-job training as Sarah learned the specific procedures, locations, and personalities that defined Fort Carson. She memorized the layout of the base, from the main post exchange to the remote training areas where soldiers conducted field exercises. Every road, building, and facility became familiar territory. Sarah's duties included conducting routine patrols, responding to various calls for service, and maintaining the general order and discipline that kept the base running smoothly. She dealt with everything from minor traffic violations to domestic disputes to more serious incidents involving theft or assault. One of her early calls involved a domestic disturbance in the family housing area. A neighbor had reported loud arguing and sounds of a possible physical altercation. Sarah and Sergeant Thompson responded quickly, and Sarah found herself dealing with a complicated situation involving a stressed military family struggling with deployment-related issues. The incident required careful handling, as it involved both military law and civilian considerations due to the spouse's civilian status. Sarah demonstrated her training by methodically gathering information from all parties, ensuring everyone's safety, and connecting the family with appropriate support resources while following proper reporting procedures. Sergeant Thompson was impressed with how Sarah handled her first significant incident. She had remained calm, followed proper procedures, and shown genuine concern for the welfare of everyone involved. He noted in her evaluation that she had the instincts and temperament to be an excellent military police officer. As weeks turned into months, Sarah's confidence and competence grew. She became familiar with the regular characters on base, from the soldiers who occasionally caused minor trouble to the civilians who worked in various support roles. She learned to read situations quickly and respond appropriately to each unique circumstance. The physical demands of patrol duty kept Sarah in excellent condition. She often found herself chasing suspects on foot, directing traffic during major events, or standing for hours during special security operations. The Colorado altitude initially challenged her, but she adapted quickly and found that her overall fitness actually improved. Sarah's supervisors began giving her increased responsibilities, including training newer soldiers who joined the unit. She discovered that she enjoyed mentoring others and helping them develop the skills and confidence needed to succeed in military police work. Her ability to explain complex procedures in simple terms made her an effective trainer. One evening shift brought an incident that would test Sarah's skills and judgment in ways she had not experienced before. A call came in about a soldier who had barricaded himself in his barracks room and was reportedly making threats. The situation required a coordinated response involving multiple military police officers, medical personnel, and the chain of command. Sarah was assigned to help establish a perimeter around the building, while more experienced officers handled the direct negotiations with the distressed soldier. However, as the situation developed, it became clear that the soldier was responding better to female voices, and Sarah was asked to assist with communication efforts. The incident lasted several hours as trained negotiators worked to peacefully resolve the situation. Sarah found herself playing a crucial support role, helping to gather background information about the soldier, coordinating with medical personnel, and maintaining security around the building. The situation eventually ended peacefully when the soldier agreed to receive help. The successful resolution of the incident earned Sarah recognition from her chain of command. Her calm professionalism during a high-stress situation demonstrated that she had fully transitioned from a trainee to a competent military police officer capable of handling serious responsibilities. Sarah's reputation within the company continued to grow as she consistently performed her duties with excellence. She volunteered for additional training opportunities, took on extra responsibilities without being asked, and maintained the highest standards in everything from her personal appearance to her report writing. Her personal life at Fort Carson was equally fulfilling. She made friends within her unit and throughout the base, participating in various recreational activities and community events. The outdoor opportunities in Colorado allowed her to pursue hiking and other activities that kept her physically and mentally sharp. As her first year at Fort Carson progressed, Sarah began thinking about her long-term career goals. She was interested in pursuing promotion and potentially attending advanced military education programs. Her supervisors encouraged these ambitions, seeing in her the qualities that made for successful non-commissioned officers and leaders. The experience of working as a military police officer had exceeded Sarah's expectations in every way. She found the work challenging, meaningful, and rewarding. Each day brought different situations that required her to use all of her training and personal qualities to serve her fellow soldiers and maintain the order that allowed the base to function effectively. Sarah's confidence in her abilities and her place in the military continued to grow with each successful resolution of challenging situations. She had proven to herself and others that she belonged in this demanding field and had the potential to achieve great things in her military career. The incident that would change everything began like any other evening shift at Fort Carson. Sarah had been with the 984th Military Police Company for 18 months and had earned the respect of her peers and supervisors through consistent professional performance. She was now considered one of the more experienced patrol officers and often worked independently. Sergeant First Class Rodriguez had recently arrived as the new patrol supervisor for the evening shift. Rodriguez came from a different unit and had a reputation for being demanding and old school in his approach to military police operations. Some of the other soldiers had mentioned that he seemed to have particular issues with female soldiers, though nothing specific had been documented. On this particular evening, Sarah was assigned to patrol the main cantonment area, which included the barracks complexes, dining facilities, and recreational areas where most evening incidents typically occurred. The shift had been relatively quiet, with only a few minor calls that she had handled routinely. Around 9 o'clock, Sarah received a call to respond to a disturbance at one of the soldier clubs on base. The report indicated that there was a verbal altercation between several soldiers that appeared to be escalating. Sarah acknowledged the call and headed to the location. Following standard procedures, when she arrived at the scene, Sarah found 3 soldiers in an increasingly heated argument outside the club. The situation appeared to involve a disagreement that had started inside and spilled out into the parking area. Sarah parked her patrol vehicle and approached the group to assess the situation. Using her training in de-escalation techniques, Sarah began separating the individuals and gathering information about what had occurred. The soldiers were intoxicated but not belligerent, and she was making progress in calming the situation when Sergeant First Class Rodriguez arrived as backup. Rodriguez immediately took charge of the scene in a way that seemed unnecessarily aggressive given the circumstances. He ordered Sarah to step back while he handled the situation, despite the fact that she had already begun making progress with the individuals involved. His approach was confrontational and seemed designed to escalate rather than resolve the situation. The soldiers, who had been responding positively to Sarah's calm and professional approach, became more agitated when Rodriguez began shouting orders and making threats about arrests and disciplinary action. Sarah tried to suggest a different approach, but Rodriguez sharply told her to remain silent and follow his lead. What followed was a display of poor judgment and excessive force that went against everything Sarah had been taught about proper military police procedures. Rodriguez ordered all 3 soldiers to assume the prone position on the asphalt parking lot, despite the fact that none of them had shown any signs of physical resistance or posed any real threat. Sarah watched in growing concern as Rodriguez used unnecessary physical force to get the soldiers into compliance. When she attempted to voice her concerns about the appropriateness of his actions, he turned his attention to her with an anger that seemed completely disproportionate to the situation. Rodriguez ordered Sarah to assist him in restraining the soldiers, but when she hesitated because she believed the level of force being used was excessive, he became increasingly aggressive toward her. He began questioning her competence, her courage, and her fitness to serve as a military police officer. The situation deteriorated rapidly when Rodriguez, apparently frustrated by what he perceived as Sarah's insubordination, ordered her to get on the ground alongside the soldiers they were supposed to be helping. When Sarah protested that this was inappropriate and against regulations, Rodriguez grabbed her arm and attempted to force her to comply. Sarah found herself in an impossible situation. Her training told her that Rodriguez's actions were wrong, but military discipline required obedience to lawful orders from superiors. The problem was determining whether Rodriguez's orders were lawful given the circumstances and his apparent loss of professional judgment. When Rodriguez physically grabbed Sarah and attempted to force her to the ground, something inside her snapped. All of her training, all of her pride in wearing the uniform, and all of her belief in doing the right thing came together in a moment of clarity. She realized that she was witnessing and being asked to participate in an abuse of power that went against everything she believed about military service. Sarah pulled away from Rodriguez's grasp and stood her ground. She looked him directly in the eyes and told him that his actions were inappropriate, potentially illegal, and that she would not participate in the mistreatment of soldiers who had done nothing to warrant such treatment. Rodriguez was stunned by Sarah's resistance. He had clearly expected her to comply without question, and her defiance left him temporarily speechless. The soldiers on the ground looked up in surprise, having witnessed the exchange between the 2 military police officers. In that moment, Sarah made a decision that would define her character and her future. Despite the potential consequences for her career, despite the intimidation tactics being used against her, she chose to do what she knew was right, rather than what was easy or expedient. She helped the soldiers to their feet, checked to ensure they were not injured, and calmly explained that they would be released with warnings rather than facing arrest. Her actions were based on the actual circumstances of the incident, rather than Rodriguez's apparent need to demonstrate his authority through unnecessary force. Rodriguez stood there in shocked silence as Sarah took control of the situation and resolved it in a professional manner that served everyone involved. The soldiers thanked her for treating them with dignity and respect, and they left the scene without any further incident. The confrontation with Rodriguez was far from over, however. As they returned to their vehicles, he made it clear that he considered Sarah's actions to be insubordination and that there would be consequences. He threatened to write her up for failure to follow orders and questioned whether she had the backbone needed for military police work. Sarah remained calm in the face of his threats. She had acted according to her training, her conscience, and the regulations that governed military police operations. If there were going to be consequences for doing the right thing, she was prepared to face them with her integrity intact. The drive back to the station was tense, with both officers lost in their own thoughts about what had just occurred. Sarah knew that she had crossed a line with Rodriguez and that her career might be in jeopardy, but she also knew that she had made the only choice she could live with. The aftermath of the confrontation with Sergeant First Class Rodriguez unfolded over the following days in ways that Sarah had not anticipated. Rather than immediately filing charges against her, Rodriguez seemed to be taking a different approach that was perhaps even more concerning than direct disciplinary action. Sarah noticed that her duty assignments began changing in subtle but significant ways. She was given the least desirable patrol routes, scheduled for the most inconvenient shifts, and excluded from training opportunities that she had previously been selected for. It became clear that Rodriguez was using his position to make her professional life as difficult as possible. More troubling was the way other soldiers began treating her differently. Word had spread about the incident, though the details seemed to have been distorted in Rodriguez's favor. Some of her colleagues began avoiding her, apparently concerned about being associated with someone who had defied a superior officer. Sarah found herself increasingly isolated within her own unit. The camaraderie that had made her job enjoyable was replaced by suspicious glances and whispered conversations that stopped when she entered a room. She realized that Rodriguez's influence was broader than she had initially understood. However, not everyone was willing to accept Rodriguez's version of events. Sergeant Thompson, who had been Sarah's field training officer, approached her privately to discuss what had really happened. He had worked with Sarah long enough to know her character and professionalism, and he was concerned about the changes he was observing. Sarah was initially hesitant to discuss the incident in detail, knowing that it could further complicate an already difficult situation. However, Sergeant Thompson persisted, explaining that he had witnessed other concerning behavior from Rodriguez and was beginning to suspect a pattern of misconduct. As their conversation continued, Sarah learned that she was not Rodriguez's first target. Thompson revealed that Rodriguez had a history of conflicts with female soldiers and had left his previous unit under circumstances that were never fully explained. The information was troubling and suggested that Sarah's experience was part of a larger problem. Thompson encouraged Sarah to document everything that had happened and to consider filing a formal complaint through the appropriate channels. He warned her that the process would be difficult and that Rodriguez would likely retaliate, but he also emphasized that allowing the behavior to continue would only enable further misconduct. Sarah spent several sleepless nights considering her options. She could accept the current situation and hope that things would improve over time, or she could take the risk of formally challenging Rodriguez's behavior and potentially face even more severe consequences for her career. The decision became easier when Sarah witnessed Rodriguez's treatment of another female soldier who had recently joined the unit. The new soldier, Private Johnson, was clearly intimidated and confused by Rodriguez's aggressive supervision style. Sarah recognized the same patterns that had led to her own confrontation. Sarah made the difficult decision to schedule a meeting with her company commander, Captain Morrison. She knew that going outside the normal chain of command was a serious step that could be interpreted as undermining military discipline. But she also knew that Rodriguez's behavior had to be addressed. Captain Morrison listened carefully as Sarah recounted the events of that evening and the subsequent treatment she had experienced. She presented her account factually and professionally, focusing on the specific actions and behaviors rather than making personal attacks on Rodriguez's character. The captain asked detailed questions about the incident and took extensive notes throughout their meeting. Sarah could tell that he was taking her allegations seriously, but she also sensed his concern about the complexity of investigating a situation involving conflicting accounts from military police officers. Captain Morrison explained the formal complaint process and the potential consequences for everyone involved. He made it clear that filing false allegations would be a serious offense, but he also assured Sarah that soldiers who reported misconduct in good faith were protected from retaliation. Sarah confirmed her intention to file a formal complaint, and Captain Morrison initiated the investigation process. This involved interviews with all parties involved, collection of any available evidence, and a thorough review of relevant regulations and procedures. The investigation took several weeks, during which Sarah continued to perform her duties while dealing with increased scrutiny and continued subtle retaliation from Rodriguez and his supporters. The stress was considerable, but Sarah found strength in knowing that she was doing the right thing. Sergeant Thompson provided crucial support during this difficult period, both as a witness to some of Rodriguez's behavior and as someone who could verify Sarah's character and professional competence. Other soldiers gradually came forward with their own concerns about Rodriguez's leadership style. The investigation ultimately substantiated Sarah's allegations and revealed a pattern of misconduct that extended beyond her individual case. Rodriguez was found to have violated several regulations regarding the treatment of subordinates and the proper use of force in military police operations. The consequences for Rodriguez were severe and immediate. He was relieved of his supervisory duties, received formal disciplinary action, and was eventually transferred to a position where he would have no authority over other soldiers. The action sent a clear message throughout the unit about acceptable standards of behavior. Sarah's courage in speaking out was officially recognized by her chain of command, though the recognition came quietly to avoid further disrupting unit cohesion. Captain Morrison personally commended her for her integrity and professional courage in a difficult situation. More importantly for Sarah's long-term career, the incident became a defining moment that demonstrated her character and leadership potential. Rather than damaging her reputation, her willingness to stand up for what was right despite personal risk marked her as someone with the moral courage necessary for increased responsibility. The unit dynamics gradually returned to normal as Rodriguez's negative influence was removed, and soldiers realized that Sarah had acted to protect everyone's welfare rather than for personal gain. The relationships that had been strained during the investigation were rebuilt stronger than before. Sarah's experience taught her valuable lessons about leadership, integrity, and the importance of maintaining professional standards even under pressure. She realized that true strength came not from blindly following orders, but from having the courage to do what was right when it mattered most. The incident also reinforced her commitment to her military career and her belief in the values that the uniform represented. She had learned that the military was not perfect, but that it provided mechanisms for addressing misconduct when soldiers had the courage to use them. As Sarah continued her service at Fort Carson, she carried with her the confidence that came from surviving a serious professional challenge with her integrity intact. She had proven to herself and others that she could handle difficult situations with grace and determination. The experience ultimately made Sarah a better soldier and leader. She became more aware of the power dynamics within military units and more committed to ensuring that all soldiers under her future supervision would be treated with the dignity and respect they deserved. Years later, as Sarah advanced through the ranks and took on positions of greater responsibility, she would often reflect on that evening when she chose to stand up rather than stand down. It remained one of her proudest moments, a time when she had proven that doing the right thing was always worth the risk.